Okay, I'm gonna do a little test here. I actually don't know if you guys can hear me right now while I'm on this thumbnail screen. So go ahead and leave a comment if you can hear me before I switch over to the video feed. And I'd be interested to know that. Again, we're working with a new platform and experimenting and learning some stuff today, among other things. So there's the feed. Good morning, everybody. Yes, it is Thanksgiving's Eve, as Trish says. Good morning, everybody. And let's be fair, it is a slow news week. So, but there is an interesting thing that happened a few days ago, and if I'm being honest, I probably missed the trend on this one, but it's something that's worth talking about. And frankly, there's not much else that is, except for maybe the pseudo peace negotiation that Biden's bragging about, where he apparently helped to broker a peace between Israel and he's saying Hezbollah, but what happened is they sat down and brokered a theoretical ceasefire just until Trump is inaugurated with the Lebanese government, which is not Hezbollah. So, and real quick for Sean, Fish, and Liberty Girl, I see 5x5, audio good. My question was, can you still hear me when the camera is off and you're seeing the thumbnail splash? That's what I wanted to. That's what I really wanted to double check on, because I need to know if I've got a hot mic before I switch over. So help me out with that. I think what you're telling me is that I did have the hot mic before I switch over to the video feed, and so I'll roll with that. Now, let's talk about the National Press Club, and I'm going to play this video and interrupt it a few times, and we'll talk about it as we move around with it. Well said. What did Cameron say? Well, I don't see Cameron. Stryker says, well said at Cameron Anderson, but I don't see Cameron in there, so I missed something. Anyway, so yeah, let me share this video and let's talk about this.
Matters. Everything matters. Everything we do is under fire. Elon Musk sits on Twitter every day, or X today, saying like, we are the media, you are the media. My message to Elon Musk is, bullshit. You're not the media. You having a blue check mark, a Twitter handle, and 300 words of cleverness doesn't make you a reporter any more than me looking at your head and seeing that you have a brain and telling you have an awesome set of tools makes me a damn neurosurgeon, right? Like what we do.
Okay, that's a psychotic comparison. He's about to say what we do, and we're gonna chew on that a bit. But 300 words of cleverness. Okay, for one, Stryker kills it right there. Absolutely. Abso-frickin-lutely. Stryker, one, First Amendment, we are the press. That is correct. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution reads that the Congress shall make no law which abridges the freedom of speech, the freedom of the press, the free practice of religion, the freedom to gather peacefully, or, and this is an important one that people forget, the freedom to petition the government for redress of grievances. So, the reason I say that one's important, what it means to be the press and to have the freedom of the press is something very different than the freedom of speech. The freedom of speech is that I can say what I want, even if it is offensive. Right? So that means I can stand up in the town square and I can make a statement. Or I can have conversations with small groups or individuals, and I am protected to say what I want to say. It's been said many times before, and this is absolutely correct. The only speech that needs protection is that speech which is abhorrent. And, the courts have extended that idea to include symbols. And I am almost, but not quite a free speech absolutist, because, you've got the classic Supreme Court, idiom, one man's profanity is another man's lyric. And I won't make the argument that gangster rappers should not be allowed to drop F-bombs in their music. Okay, do what you want to do. But where censorship is appropriate, there are places where censorship is indeed appropriate. And that's of course in the exposure of lewd, lascivious material to children. And that really is just about my only sticking point on censorship is, no, you don't get to show my children graphic pornography. You don't get to do that. You don't get to take their innocence from them. Outside of that, you'd be hard pressed to get me to say that someone should not be allowed to say something. In fact, in a case like this video that we're watching, I highly encourage people who have obnoxious or unintelligent opinions to voice those. It gives us an opportunity to correct them and to help them be better. And failing that, because often the problem is that they are not eligible for improvement, right? These are people who need to put a few more points in intellect, but just don't have the eeps to make the next level. They're not there yet. We need to know that, right? If somebody is too stupid to learn, then I need to know that so that I don't waste my time trying to teach them something. Tim mentions the fire in a theater thing. That is apocryphal. You are, in fact, so that comes from a Supreme Court decision. I forget the name of the case now, but it was used as an example by one of the justices. He said you're not protected if you scream fire in a crowded theater. And it was not even part of the actual decision. It was something that he said in making a hypothetical argument in support of censorship. The case had to do with a man who was arrested and was being charged with essentially sedition because he was handing out pamphlets that were against the draft. And he was basically being arrested for seditious activity. And the court actually determined, no, his opinion is that the draft is bad, and he wants people to know that his opinion is the draft is bad, and he wants them to agree with that opinion, and he is absolutely allowed to say that. There was another Supreme Court case later where one of the lawyers brought up the fire in a crowded theater argument, and the Supreme Court justices said, no, shut up. Just shut up. You can say fire in a crowded theater. Your right to say that is absolutely protected. However, context matters. And if your use of language can be curtailed by the law. Now, this is the opinion of the law, and it is somewhat different to my opinion. But the opinion of the law is that if your language becomes a call to action for criminal activity, right? For example, if you were to go on the television as a very famous pirate celebrity and say, I wonder when the last time an actor shot a president was, there's a good case to be made there, but there should at least be some kind of legal ramification for that. If you are a massive celebrity and go out on social media and say, I've been thinking very seriously about burning down the White House, right? There should be some reaction from government there. Now, if it turns out that the president that you say you want to cause harm to is the one that is illegally and unreasonably weaponizing the government, well, then we've seen what happens there. The FBI shows up in the middle of the night and murders you in your sleep. So maybe there's something going on here where the way we treat people who threaten to murder Joe Biden and the way we treat people who threaten to murder Donald Trump is different, and it should not be. Like that's a very basic, equal protections thing, right? The fact that Johnny Depp, Madonna, Snoop Dogg, who's the white boy? Eminem, Marshall Mathers, and the fact that they haven't been murdered in their sleep by the government speaks to an enormous bias that exists in the enforcement of the right of the people to speak their minds. But even that, like Sergeant Major mentioned, leaking classified information, I don't have an absolute position on that. But that is a very complex topic that, frankly, Dad, I'd love to have a conversation with you about that, because I think that I would say that Julian Assange, Snowden, and what's her face? The tranny that got a bunch of soldiers killed. I can't remember its name, but I imagine you guys know who I'm talking. Bradley Manning. I think that those three are very, very different creatures. Most especially because Julian Assange was never a government agent who swore an oath to keep those secrets. He didn't. He was actually under no legal obligation to retain those secrets, which does not necessarily by itself ameliorate the harm caused by the leaks. But there is a place where whistleblowers are valuable and a valuable and important part of the system, largely because the system is by nature adversarial. And that's something that you have to remember. Just this is a tangent, but it's something that people don't understand. It's something that a lot of people who need to understand it do not understand. So a good example of the adversarial nature of the system and the government generally, if you're a veteran and you were injured or you got sick during a war, etc., you were deployed or even, harmed, injured in training, when you enlisted, you signed a contract of compensation, which included the "we break it, we'll buy it" clause for disability compensation. And when you get out, really before you get out, if any of you happen to be coming up on that ETS date, document, and begin filing immediately. But you have to file paperwork with the VA, the Veterans Affairs, in order to get that compensation. And forget about the money for a minute. There's a lot that goes into that. But what you need to understand, what I want you guys to understand, if you are in that position, if you're a veteran, or if you know a veteran, or if you know someone active duty who is about to switch to having veteran status instead of being active duty, etc., when you file your claim with the VA, it is a claim. You are filing a lawsuit against the federal government. And they don't want you to understand that because, of course, the adage goes, a man who represents himself has a fool for a lawyer, right? So they want you to think that it's something you have to do on your own. And that pervades through the entire government structure. Likewise, within the entity of the press, which Kierkegaard referred to as a as a sort of growth out of the public in on future materia. No, on the modern age. On the modern age, Soren Kierkegaard talked about the public, the body public, the body politic, as an entity unto itself. So all of us together as members of the public make up the constituent parts of this entity, which is itself independent from us, right? In the same way that you are not your heart, but your heart is a part of you. You are not the public, but you are a piece of it. And that there's a natural communication between those constituent segments, which creates a consciousness, a nearly pseudo-sapient consciousness of the larger entity that is the public. The press is a similar, smaller entity contained therein. So while your heart may not be you, your mind is much more you than any other piece of the constituency of your collected organism. And the press is such an entity. It has its own distinct consciousness separate from the body politic, which influences the body politic. So because of the nature and the size of these entities, they are slow moving, but they do move in a consensus. Even if the consensus isn't total, the consensus will acquire and drag things in one direction. That's precisely how the press, through such a navigable consensus, has kind of swept currents in to drag them in one direction. That's how we went from safe, legal, and rare to on demand at taxpayer expense without reason or excuse. Right? The press moves everything in one direction, and the body politic, the body of the public moves slowly behind it. You can think of the kind of intervening entity as what we call the zeitgeist, the kind of the spirit of the age, right? So what this cat is failing to understand is that the press and the zeitgeist are being not just replaced, they're being decentralized and atomized by the power of the individual to engage in the activities of the press, which was the intent of the founding fathers. The founders envisioned, when they penned the First Amendment and codified into law the absolute freedom of every individual American to use the power of the press, they envisioned people having political opinions, arguing those opinions vocally and loudly in the public square with one another in a free marketplace of ideas, in an exchange of concept and argument, where even a bad idea might have a grain of goodness in it, right? Like, here's an example of such an idea. Andrew Yang famously in 2020 ran in the primary on the issue of universal basic income. I'm not a communist. I'm not a big fan of universal basic income, but and I think it's generally a bad idea. But I would be happy to sit down at the table and have the conversation. Okay, if I concede ground on creating a universal basic income in America, can we begin by funding it by just straight abolishing the rest of the welfare base, right? No more Medicaid, no more food stamps, no more housing assistance, gone, right? Abolish the welfare state. And then maybe we talk about UBI, right? The abortion argument, similar. You know, they love to talk about the edge cases, the fringe cases, the idea of rape, incest, life of the mother. And of course, we know from the statistics that all altogether, all those three combined, make up less than 1% of abortion cases. 99% of all abortions are elective prophylactic surgeries. They are medical procedures designed and intended to cause the death of a child. And when you say, okay, we'll make exceptions for life of the mother, rape, and incest, but everything else banned. Every other case is murder. They don't even want to discuss that. But it's important that we be able to have these arguments in the public square, because the alternative is Canada, the UK, where when the party in power changes, your freedom of speech changes. And what was politically expedient and supportive of the last party has just become oppositive to the new administrative rule. And that makes it, by definition, under the law, hate speech. And so in Canada, the UK, basically almost the entirety of the rest of the world outside of the US, and even here to an extent, I'm sorry to report, you can spend time in jail for merely speaking. Now, there are numerous examples of that we've covered in the past that I won't begrudge. I won't beleaguer here. But let's get back to what this guy has to say.
What journalists do, what you did in Mississippi, what Al Jazeera does in the Middle East. You don't proclaim yourself to be a reporter. Like, that's nonsense. Like, being a reporter is hard, really hard. You have to care. You have to do the hard work. You have to get up every single day and say, I want to get to the closest approximation of the truth without any fear, without any favoritism. You don't do that by popping off on Twitter. You don't do that by having an opinion. You do it by doing the hard work.
Okay, now what is he talking about? Who are the people he's talking about? He's trying to disparage the so-called citizen journalist, and simultaneously attempting to conflate that with independent journalists. And there is a big damn difference. Tim Pool actually laid it out pretty well. I don't know, a week or so ago. He was talking about this exact concept, the conflation by these guys of the citizen journalist and the independent journalist. So an independent journalist is like an Ian Miles Chong, what Tim Pool was before he started Timcast. But you've got a bunch of cats out there that are independent journalists. And what that means is that they do not work for one of the big companies. They just go out and they do reporting. They take their cell phone, or maybe they buy a nicer camera and go work with that. Viva Fry is a good example. The fluffy Mexican guy with the microphone taped to a wooden spoon. I can't remember his name now, but they're all over the place. There's a lot of them out there. Yes, Cameron. Yes, indeed. But the independent journalist, that is their full-time job. They make their money full-time by seeking stories, seeking the information related to the stories, trying to figure out what's going on and reporting about it. And then they earn money through monetization on various social media platforms. Some of them have sponsorships where, they do an ad read and get paid by a company to do product placement, various things like that. Then there's the citizen journalist, and he's trying to conflate the two, right? So if you are just Joe, you're a construction worker and you're on your way home from work and you see a nasty car crash, you pull out your cell phone and film what's going on. and you gotta use your head on this, right? Sometimes getting involved and trying to help out is the right thing to do. Sometimes you're just going to get in the way. I saw a car crash last summer that was nasty, but I saw it when it happened, and I could have popped out my phone and filmed. Instead, I ran over to check on the guys that were there, and the guy that got T-boned had a severely broken arm, and his door was smashed in, and he couldn't get his seatbelt undone. And I went over and ripped the door off and cut the seatbelt out, got him out, and then the cops showed up and started asking for IDs, and I said, okay, I'm out. Right. But if the cops were already there, the firefighters, first responders, somebody's already there breaking them out, getting out the jaws of life, doing what needs to be done. Maybe the thing to do is to film it and then post it on X, et cetera, and say, hey, nasty car accident at the corner of X and Y. Maybe take another route. Traffic might be about to get bad. What I have just done is journalism. But it's not what I do. I'm not going to make any money off of it. It's probably, right? It's just basic. It's just quick and easy, and I'm going to go home, and I'm never going to do it again. That's the citizen journalist. What this guy is trying to do is he's trying to conflate I saw something interesting, and I want to tell people about it, and I'm never going to post again, with I do this all day, every day, but I don't work for MSNBC or CNN or whoever. Right? So this is more of that nonsense gatekeeping licensure malarkey that we've discussed in the past, where the point is not the question of what the quality is. It's not the question of the competency of the individuals that they're discussing. The point is to prevent people from becoming competition for these sociopaths and liars. So Elon says we are the media now, and I agree. Now, right here, what I do, I am not arguing that I'm a journalist. I am media. I do produce media. That media does interact with news. I perform analysis. I make commentary. I like to tell a joke every now and then because fuck these guys. Things who are ridiculous require to be ridiculed. It's how we repair them. Shame and ridicule are a great tool for correcting undesirable behavior and entity, in fact. And to be clear, that's another part of the conflation and the misdirection that this guy offers. What Elon said is we are the media now. This guy is saying that that's the same as saying that every American is a journalist now, and that somehow that degrades the value of what a journalist does. Okay, he made the comparison to being a neurosurgeon. All right, Sunshine, the car accident happens. I'll go back to that example. The car accident happens, right? And there's not a reporter that happens to be standing there with a camera on watching it when it happens. But there's a citizen with a cell phone who has just voluntarily deputized himself to report. This is information that is pertinent and maybe even vital to some subset of citizens. And that subset of people may only be the people who need to use this particular road on their route in whatever commute they're involved in, right? That may only be 5 people. Hell, where I live, that's probably one logging trucker for the next 3 hours. But it does fucking matter to him. If I have a piece of information, if there's a car coming down the road that hits a deer and spins out sideways and tumbles over and locks down the highway in front of the house, and it's going to be a hot damn minute before it's moved, there is a logging trucker that is interested in that information. Maybe 2. And I might not make a buck, but I sure as hell might save their bottom line for at least the day. That's valuable. That has value. Okay, so he made the neurosurgeon comparison. If somebody falls down and is having a stroke in the same gas station, this guy's argument is that your first aid, CPR, and making the 911 phone call to get an ambulance there does not have any value at all because you are not the neurosurgeon that can actually solve the problem entirely. His argument is that it is better to let the patient die than for a not neurosurgeon to seek out the assistance of the neurosurgeon. So what's another great example? They're eating the dogs and they're eating the cats. This media, this organization of neurosurgeons, as he so puts it, told you all that it was a lie, that Haitians were not eating the dogs and eating the cats. And citizen journalists and independent journalists shot video, told their anecdotal stories, filed Freedom of Information Act requests to get their hands on copies of police reports and 911 calls and non-emergency police calls, and proved beyond the shadow of a doubt that the problem was substantial, extensive, persistent, and had been going on for several years. Yeah, they kept repeating the number that there were like 50,000 people in that city and 20,000 immigrants had come in, but they failed to say, it's 50,000 when you count the 20,000 illegal immigrants. They didn't add 50% to their population. They didn't go from 50 to 70 by adding the 20. No. They doubled their population. They went from right around 30 to just over 50. Xander Max says, more accurately, it's independent media. For the most part, it's not journalism. There are a lot of journalists out there. And Alex says, Glenn Greenwald, I would classify as a journalist. Tim Pool, absolutely not. Tim Pool is most correctly classified as a retired journalist because what he did before he started doing Timcast was conflict reporting and going out. He was at the Occupy rallies doing on-the-ground reporting on the rape crisis in the tents and just the general psychopathy of the leftists and communists that overtook. Because remember, Occupy Wall Street started out very much as a libertarian movement, and then it was co-opted and infiltrated by people without jobs, communists. And that's a whole. In fact, I'll make a note about that. That's a whole topic for another show. Is the power of unemployment. Unemployment, Dem activists. I'd probably do a whole show on that. Because that's a big part of what happened at Occupy is a bunch of well-meaning libertarians went to protest bank bailouts, and then they had to go back to work Monday morning. And so the communists who don't have jobs showed up and had, leftist communist billionaire donors who basically support communist causes, not because they are communists themselves, like Soros. Soros is not a communist. Soros is somebody who understands that he can fund sociopath communists and use them as a martial weapon to destabilize U.S. politics and conversation. So Tim Pool, I would absolutely classify as having been a journalist. He is not currently. What he does now is basically the same thing I do. He just does it more successfully. Excuse me. So the long and the short of it, I'll wrap with this. The idea that we are the media now, absolutely. And I think going forward into the Donald Trump administration, the third term of the president. Should be. I think we are not only going to see more decentralization as CNN, MSNBC, and the like are hemorrhaging viewers, hemorrhaging money, hemorrhaging employees. They've already announced they're going to be laying off not just the rank and file. They're not just going to say, well, we only need 2 janitors on this floor so the other 3 can go home. They're going to start firing big name talents, because that's how you cut $1 million or $3 million or $30 million out of a budget line item. These hosts make an exorbitant amount of money, and they just don't deliver the value on it anymore. And the networks are clearly seeing that. Comcast trying to sell them off sell off the ones they own, like MSNBC. So you're going to see that crumble, decentralize substantially, and because market forces move, that demand is going to be filled by a new supply. And understand that the demand is not for let me say this, let me organize my thoughts and say this correctly. The demand is for a media diet to be filled. But that diet needs to be one that is intellectually nutritious. And we're talking about a large, unwieldy media that has proven time and again, reporting on the Russia hoax, reporting on the Hunter laptop, the 51 signatories to the Russia disinformation letter, the piss tape reporting, hell, just the reporting on how Donald Trump feeds fish with Japanese nobility or whatever. They've proven repeatedly to be liars and to tell lies that are really dangerous. Like tomorrow we'll be talking about the lie that you can feed a family of 10 on $58 for Thanksgiving dinner. That'll be a little bit of our conversation for tomorrow. Try to keep it light and fun, but as we see that decentralize, I think you're going to see more. You're going to see more shows like this start to pick up a lot of extra subscribers and viewership and expand and build. You're going to see the actual independent journalists becoming much more successful generally. You're going to see the citizen journalist doing more to lift the load. That's just, hey, let me get some, even if your motivation is let me get some likes and follows, that is a compensation of a sort. Especially if what you're sharing is a product that has value that people are interested in. And believe it or not, attention, there's a reason we say pay attention. Attention is a resource which is finite and has value. So I think it's a good thing. I think we're going to see it. I think we're going to see it uplift a lot of voices and generally help to improve the conversation. That said, tomorrow is Thanksgiving, and we're going to have it's not so big an issue in my house with my family, even to the extended family. But some of you out there are going to be going to dinner and sitting down next to your blue-haired psycho liberal aunt. Good luck. Just remember, we have the mandate, and everything she thinks is wrong. I'm going to go ahead and put a pen in it right there, guys. Thanks for watching today. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.